We're diving right into a massive industrial mystery today. Why exactly do our cookout supplies never seem to match up? I mean, if you've ever hosted a summer cookout, stood by the grill, and realized you've got two leftover hot dogs and absolutely nothing to put them in, you are definitely not alone. Today, we're going to unpack the history, the manufacturing purpose, and the real-world mechanics behind one of the most enduring, kind of mildly infuriating anomalies in our modern food supply chain.
So let's just get right into it. Why do we always end up with extra buns or extra hot dogs? It's a universal frustration, right? It's plagued backyard barbecues and grocery shoppers literally since the 1940s. It seems like such a totally simple problem to fix. Why on earth wouldn't two products designed specifically to be eaten together be sold in matching quantities? It genuinely feels like an oversight, or, maybe a clever ploy by grocery stores to get us to spend just a little bit more cash. But to understand why this actually happens, we have to look past the grocery store aisle and step right onto the factory floor. Now, if you've seen the 1991 movie Father of the Bride, you probably remember Steve Martin's character George Banks having a complete, absolute meltdown in the supermarket over this exact issue. It's so relatable because he perfectly captures our collective annoyance. He treats this simple packaging mismatch like a grand food industry conspiracy to rip off the trusting public. And while it's a hilarious cinematic moment, it reflects a very real cultural frustration. But as you'll see, the truth isn't a conspiracy at all. It's really just a story of industrial inertia. Let's start with Section 1, the meat industry's alibi. To crack this case, we first have to investigate the meat packers and their long-standing weight-based logic. Before the 1940s, hot dogs weren't really sold in prepackaged plastic wrap. You just went down to your local neighborhood butcher and you bought your meat by the pound. But when the industry shifted toward those centralized, prepackaged retail distributions in supermarkets, they had to establish a standard. And it all starts with a very specific number, 1.6 ounces. Back then, the standard hot dog was engineered to weigh exactly 1.6 ounces. This wasn't some random arbitrary number. When companies like Oscar Mayer started wrapping these up for direct-to-consumer sales, they were aiming for a specific, familiar target weight for the entire package. Which brings us to the 10 to the pound rule. It's basically a simple math equation. By making each hot dog exactly 1.6 ounces, exactly 10 of them add up to 16 ounces, which is exactly 1 full pound. See, meat producers prioritized simple pricing transparency over arbitrary unit counts. Selling meat by the pound was the established standard, and a 1 pound package just felt like a reasonable amount for a family meal. So once these massive meatpacking factories invested millions of dollars into machinery designed to weigh, sort, and package exactly 10 hot dogs into a 1 pound pack, well, that standard became practically set in stone. All right, moving on to Section 2, the baking industry's alibi. Let's look at our second suspect and see how their side of the story is entirely shaped by physical geometry, not weight. Bakers don't really care about pounds and ounces of meat. They're thinking about baking trays, conveyor belts, and massive industrial ovens. They rely on heavy-gauge aluminized steel pans perfectly designed to hold exactly 8 rolls in 2 tight clusters of 4. Why? Because this layout guarantees super even heat distribution during high-speed mass production baking. Dough expands when it bakes, right? Arranging them in tight clusters of 4 helps them maintain a consistent, uniform shape. And these industrial ovens are cranking out up to 96,000 buns an hour. The pans are calibrated to perfectly fit the width of the factory conveyor belts. So changing from an 8-pack to a 10-pack wouldn't just mean swapping out a plastic bag. It would literally require completely re-engineering the pans, the conveyor belts, the whole shebang. So putting them head-to-head really reveals that these two perfectly paired foods are operating on completely different logistical planets. We've got the butcher's weight rule fighting the baker's geometry rule. And here is the real kicker. Because both the meat processing and commercial baking industries operate on incredibly thin profit margins, it is wildly expensive for either side to change their factory machinery. They established these standards independently decades ago, and honestly, because the current system technically works and makes the money, neither side has a strong financial incentive to blink first and overhaul their entire production line. Which leads us straight into Section 3, cultural outrage and petitions. Because while the factory bosses might be perfectly happy, the average person trying to organize a 4th of July cookout is definitely not. Enter Kraft Heinz in 2021. Now, Heinz doesn't even make hot dogs or buns, but they obviously rely heavily on you eating them with ketchup. They launched this massive campaign called the Hot Dog Pact. They basically used social media to demand equal packaging from big bun and big wiener companies. And just look at these staggering metrics, it shows just how deeply this hit home. $13 million in earned media value, a massive 1.2 billion impressions, and over 33,000 signatures on change.org. They even plastered billboards near the headquarters of major producers demanding answers. And hey, the campaign actually worked. Sort of. It was a massive PR success for Heinz, and Wonder Bread totally took notice. They partnered with Heinz to release the highly elusive, mythical 10-pack of buns. But there is a catch. This monumental breakthrough was only a limited release, and it was only available in Ontario, Canada. So, while Canadian shoppers at a few select grocers got to experience perfect bun-to-dog harmony, the rest of the continent was left shaking their heads, still searching for a real fix. So, until we get a real industrial revolution, we are at Section 4, barbecue math and leftovers. We have to rely on a little bit of simple math to solve our own cookout conundrum. Are you ready for it? The absolute magic number to finally break even and achieve total packaging parity for your gathering is 40. It's just calculating the least common multiple of 8 and 10. The math is incredibly straightforward. You buy 4 packs of hot dogs, that gives you 40 dogs. You buy 5 packs of buns, that gives you 40 buns. Boom. Doing this guarantees you can serve 40 guests without a single stray dog or empty bun left over. Now, admittedly, this is a fantastic, elegant mathematical solution if you're throwing a massive neighborhood block party. But yeah, it's maybe just a little bit overkill for a casual Tuesday night family dinner. So if hosting for 40 people isn't exactly in your weekend plans, what's the takeaway? The experts suggest getting creative and making those inevitable leftovers sound absolutely amazing. Extra buns? They're fantastic for building hearty submarine sandwiches, toasting up with some garlic butter, or even pressing into a beautifully gooey grilled cheese. Seriously, try it. And as for the extra hot dogs, they are perfectly utilized chopped up in rich, savory franks and beans, thrown into a steaming bowl of ramen, or diced into flavorful breakfast scrambles like huevos con salchicha. You really don't have to let this industrial mismatch turn into food waste. But hold on, because we've got a wild twist for Section 5, the accidental solution. Let's look at how modern economic pressures might actually solve this 80-year-old mystery completely by accident. We're talking about the phenomenon of shrinkflation. As the costs of raw materials and transportation keep going up, meat packers are desperately looking for ways to manage costs without jacking up the sticker price. And how do they do that? They quietly reduce the package weights. Instead of that traditional 16-ounce, 10-pack standard, tons of brands are transitioning to a 12 or 14-ounce package containing just 8 hot dogs. By slightly upsizing the individual dog but dropping the total count, they're naturally shifting into an 8-pack format. And suddenly, ironically, it perfectly matches the standard baker's 8-pack of buns. Consumers usually notice a price hike way more than a missing hot dog, so this sneaky corporate corner cutting might accidentally solve our biggest cookout headache once and for all. Plus, the whole hot dog market is diversifying incredibly fast. The rise of vegan and plant-based hot dogs, which actually make up 15% of all new product launches right now, is severely disrupting that old 10 to the pound rule. These soy and pea protein products just don't care about traditional butcher's math. They often come in totally unique 4 or 6 packs. So as consumer tastes shift and premium options gain more market share, the rigid grip of the classic 10-pack is definitely loosening, forcing the industry into a much more varied landscape. So, as we wrap up this explainer, we've seen how a seemingly simple grocery store mismatch is actually the result of decades of industrial history, physics, and economics. So I've got to leave you with this final thought. Are you actually ready to embrace modern shrinkflation if it finally brings perfect peace and symmetry to your backyard barbecue?
Or are you always going to stay loyal to that historical 16-ounce 10-pack, even if it means eating a couple of sad, bunless dogs? The choice and the math is totally up to you.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more How Meets History.